You're now listening to Directing Magic with your host, Marquette Jones.
Hello, and welcome back to Directing Magic. This is Marquette Jones, and today I have a new, not so new person coming on the show, Bridget Stokes. She was one of my first guests on the show. We talked about her script that she had that she was really looking forward to getting made. We talked about her past movies and her collaboration with other filmmakers. This time, Bridget, we get to talk about how you actually got the script made that you talked about on the show and how it's doing on the festivals and all that good stuff. So welcome, Bridget.
Hi, Marquette. Thank you so much for having me on again.
I'm like, as soon as I saw like that you had your premiere, I was like, oh, you have to come back and tell me how you did that.
It is such a nice thing when you can talk about a project and then it actually comes to fruition.
Exactly. And it didn't take too long after we talked about it the last time. So
that's true.
So I guess, I don't know, where should we start? Well, let's start with like the best news, which is that you got it made and it premiered at Tribeca, I believe. Is that correct?
It premiered at the Newport Beach Film Festival.
Oh, that's right.
Shortly after that was in Bentonville. It's been at the Harlem Film Festival, and it's going to be at a women's film festival in Dallas in August.
So how did you decide on Newport Beach as your premiere?
They were really excited about the film. And, they wanted to put it in a really good slot. And, I had a call with the programmer over there, and she just had so many authentic, wonderful things to say about the movie. So it felt like a really good fit. Mm-hmm. They have a family film section that they played it in, and it ended up winning the jury award in that section. So It turned out to be a really sort of perfect first experience for the film.
Was it kind of on the festival market for a long time before Newport Beach? I know, and I'm asking this not because your film isn't awesome, it totally is, but I know I've had other people come on the show and say, oh, it took so long to find like the premiere festival for my project. And so I'm wondering if your experience was similar to that, or was it pretty quick?
That's an interesting question because I hear that a lot and definitely feel like it's relative. I directed a short called Think Fast 2 or 3 years ago, and it took a lot longer for that one to find its first festival. And then as you hear often, once you get that first festival, it's like all the other festivals feel like they have permission to now play your movie.
Yeah.
So comparatively, no, it was very fast to find our premiere. And we were in conversations with potential distributors and potential sales agents from the very start. So it always felt like a little bit of a race against the clock in terms of if we wanted to have a festival run at all, it would need to happen very quickly to be able to get out in front of a theatrical and VOD release.
Makes sense. And did they, I totally have jumped ahead of myself, but that's okay. So now we know that the film is coming out. What is the film about?
So the film is about Emmett, who is a 12-year-old genius. So he's in high school with his older brother, who's 17. And his brother starts getting into trouble. He's accused of this rash of thefts that's been happening at the school. And he's going to be both kicked out, potentially threatened with jail time. And now his mom wants to send him away to a boarding school. So for Emmett, his little brother, he feels responsible and he feels really scared. And so he decides that it's his job to save his brother. And he also feels like as a 12-year-old kid in this older high school setting, he doesn't have the capacity to be able to solve this on his own. So that's when he teams up with his SAT tutor, who's played by Rita Wilson. And the two of them, and she's an amateur mystery novelist. So the two of them go on this, madcap caper to try and find the real criminal. And so it ends up being really funny, but it also is heartfelt, and it also, I think, addresses some issues. It doesn't shy away from some issues that I think, typically in comedies, people try and keep it really light, but it addresses race and it addresses mental illness. And for me, it's really important to be able to do that specifically in the comedy setting, to say, life is tragic and funny and both at the same time. And let's talk about it.
Was it challenging for you to fit those pieces into the comedy setting without, I don't know, taking away the energy of the project or of the film?
That was not the challenge, I don't think, and for two reasons. One, because the writer, who is my longtime partner, Vicky White, who we've, this is our probably 7th, 8th project together, is such an excellent writer. She writes things that are so funny and so unique, and in her voice, and she really is really adept at tackling tough issues, but finding the funny. So I had a really good script and guide. And then for me personally, I mean, I am your friend who will be laughing through the most awkward and difficult moments and trying to make a joke, while things are tough. And my children and family will tell you this. Can everything not be funny? But for me, I really that is, and probably I'm sure it's a coping mechanism, but it also is a very enjoyable way for me to live my life.
Exactly.
To have that lens and to have that filter, this is terrible, but also, and you think about it, it's hilarious.
Yes. I had one of those moments in real life. This is totally off subject, but I fell, and I haven't fallen as an adult in I don't know, decade plus, right? So I'm so it happened. I literally had this, this stupid long story, but I was trying to get out of my friend's apartment, but I had her key. I didn't want to leave her key where somebody could get it. So I was I'm going to go out of the back, out of her garage door. So I'm going to have the garage door start to come down. I'm going to run out, and then the garage door will close behind me, and then the key will be inside, and everything will be great. And so, first of all, there was a terrible plan because the garage door has a sensor, as most modern garage doors have now. Right. And so it stopped as I was running through, but as I was running through, because I am not an athletic person, I tripped over my own feet.
Oh no.
And then fell on the concrete, total scrub. And I'm super stunned. And I say all of this to say, yes, this was funny. Not funny on my elbow and, hip and knee and ankle, but it was a funny moment in real life. And I really, as I was sitting on the concrete, I was if this were a comedy, I would be cracking up right now.
And even the things that are not funny in the moment, they will be.
Yeah.
I mean, looking back, they're so funny.
So, yeah. So, I feel you on that, on being able to laugh through challenging moments. So you made a comedy that seems decidedly family friendly, and I wanted to know more about that. I haven't had too many people that I've come across who are making family friendly content.
Right.
So I guess I'm curious about your decision to go in that direction, and how is that different from any of your other projects that you've done?
Yeah, it probably, it 100% is the most family friendly and maybe the only family friendly content I've ever done. And, Vicky, the writer and my producing partner on this film, and I have had lots of conversations about, our children range in age from 7 to 13. Mm-hmm. And we've had lots of conversations about they've grown out of sort of, Moana and Frozen and Disney. Mm-hmm. And, really the Marvel universe is not quite appropriate yet. And there's nothing in between. So there was partially that, and there was also this, there was a lot of reflecting on the John Hughes era of sort of comedies. They were comedies, and they had children in them, and they dealt with tough stuff, and you could watch them at 45 or 11 and still really enjoy them. And I'm just not seeing that available anymore. I'm not seeing anything that sort of fits that mold. And I think with the advent of films like Superbad, which I love and think is hilarious, it became really popular to make these sort of raunchy comedies. And, you know, the young kid stuff is always going to be there because you got to get a break from your kids. So it really was important to me to see this kind of, I mean, these are the movies that I enjoyed growing up. And so it was important for me to start seeing these types of movies again. I will say, though, I did not realize until we started our festival run how much of a family comedy it is. Or maybe, I mean, we won the award for Best Family Film at Newport. We won it at Bentonville. We just, we had no idea how much it was going to be squarely in that family film genre. I honestly think that the reason for that is because there just isn't enough family content. So, you know, of course they would grasp at Emmett, now Boy Genius, to be in that genre. And
are you seeing different opportunities because it's family friendly, or is it about the same as any indie film?
I think it was really helpful in terms of finding distribution and finding our international sales agent. I think for both of them, they were excited to have a family comedy to put out there because they saw the demand and didn't have a lot of films that could meet that demand. So I definitely think it worked to our advantage at the end of the day. Yes.
How were they able, in particular your international sales agent, how were they able to address this idea, this fallacy of, you know, African American movies not doing well overseas?
That's a great question. That, I will say, that fallacy still exists.
Okay.
Still hear it all the time. We hear it we heard with Boy Genius, we've heard it several times. You know, I think any company that takes on a film has to make marketing adjustments according to who they're trying to sell the film to. And so I definitely think that there were different adjustments made for getting ready for international sales than for the U.S. market, where, you know, we accept that that's no longer the case here in the U.S. I don't think the international film community has moved beyond that in any way. I think we're still in the dark ages there a little bit.
No pun intended. As far as dark ages. Okay. Well, that's a bummer. But then I also, like, when I look at your film, it's so universal, you know, like it doesn't feel any different from, I think there was a movie last year called Wonder.
Yeah.
It feels very much in that same vein. Like, and I would watch this as easily as I did watch Wonder and have all the same vibes. So I don't know. I guess I'm just personally, I was hoping that you were going to say, no, everything's great now. Black Panther, blew everything open for the whole entire world.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because that's pretty important to me is, you know, even while we're seeing more diversity and actors of color having more opportunities and women having more opportunities, there's still we have like our security blanket of like, well, let's have Black characters, but let's like code them as Black, and let's have Asian and Latinx characters, but let's code them according to the stereotypes we expect.
Right.
And there's also a problem where we still have very segregated content. Like, oh, listen, I love Blackish. I love Fresh Off the Boat. I love Jane the Virgin. I don't know why we have to have comedies where we can only have Black people or only have the Asian. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so for me, two things that are really important that I think we achieve in Boy Genius are, one, it's a really diverse cast. Mm-hmm. And two, we don't go like, okay, Emmett and his brother and mom are Black. Like, what can we do to really let's treat our audience like children and like really make sure they know, that they're hitting these Black stereotypes, because that's what I see way too much of. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was like, if every character on the screen can't be any race, like I haven't succeeded in telling the kind of story I want to tell, or gender for that matter. You know what I mean? If you can't flip it, then you're leaning way too hard into the stereotype. You know what I mean? I
do. And that's a really good exercise for any of us, I think, going forward.
Right. Like, can you change your character's race, gender, age, and still really have the essence of who that character is? Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So I realized I buried the lead, the very important lead. The name of the film on the festival circuit is Emmett. It is changing to the title Boy Genius.
Yeah.
Before you guys release it on VOD and in the theaters.
Yeah.
Why did you guys change it?
It started with, and this, I don't think this is terribly uncommon, but, we had the film out as Emmett, and then our international sales agent said, we really want to go out with a film that people will hear the title, they'll know it's a family comedy, and they'll know that, the title tells them what kind of movie this is. Mm-hmm. So they said, would you guys consider letting us change the title internationally to Adventures of a Boy Genius? And for Vicky and I, it was really, it was not a difficult leap. It's like, I completely see their point. Mm-hmm. When you see a film called Emmett, you don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. And so Adventures of a Boy Genius, it sounds fun. I get that, if you're a parent scrolling through and you see Emmett, you might just pass it by. Whereas if you see Adventures of a Boy Genius and it's a fun title, mm-hmm. you're more likely to sort of stop and, oh, maybe my whole family can watch this. So that was their pitch to us. And we felt like, yes, that makes total sense. So then we actually went to our distributor, went to Gravitas and said, hey, internationally, they're going to call it Adventures of a Boy Genius. Do you guys want to do that too? Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to remember the exact reasoning, but something having to do with the number of characters you can have for VOD. Adventures of a Boy Genius was like 2 characters too long. So they were like, how about Boy Genius? And we felt like it did the same job and was close to the international title. And so it felt like it was not a difficult thing. It felt like a great move.
Mm-hmm. Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's all about the counting your characters these days.
Yeah, I know. That was funny. And we really pushed because we thought, it would be great if it was the same name.
Yeah.
For both. But, what can you do? I mean, VOD characters are VOD characters. I guess there's nothing you can really do about that.
It's not yet. I don't know. I mean, that's, yeah. Anyway, so.
We'll take up that fight in a few years.
Exactly. So working our way backwards, we've talked about the festival and distribution. How did you ultimately find your investors and get the show on the road in terms of production?
Vicky had adapted, she didn't write it. No, a friend of Vicky's had written this really funny, great short called For Keeps. Mm-hmm. And she directed it, and she brought me on as a producer. And we made it in Texas, and we were looking for finishing funds for that. And this company called 6 Foot came on board for some of the finishing funds for the short. And we did some animation in that, and it was funny, and it was kids, and it was magical realism. Mm-hmm. And that really was the beginning of us saying, we have more films. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think 6 Foot had just started becoming interested in and planning for becoming a film company as well. Mm-hmm. So through working with them, we were able to make both Boy Genius and a film called The Lost Husband. And we did those both last year. I directed Boy Genius, and Vicky directed The Lost Husband, and we both produced both of them. And so it was just a very fortuitous, great relationship that happened organically through relationships and sort of making other content, and that content feeding into new content. And I think that's sort of how it always goes, and it always takes a long time and requires a lot of trust and a leap of faith. But, we're at the end of the day, and I think any filmmaker who gets their film made would say this, we're really lucky. Mm-hmm. A lot of luck involved.
Oh gosh, that just drives me insane. This whole idea of like luck has to be on my side.
Wouldn't it be great if it was just like an algebra equation, like just solve for X?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Please, that would just make my life so much easier.
I know.
Like study algebra, as painful as that sounds.
No, I mean that is the thing in this business, right? It's funny. My mother has said this to me over the years several times. She's like, well, you can do everything right and work really hard and be very talented, and you still need that lucky door to open. Like that, there still needs to be that intangible, nothing you can do to get it or push it away thing that happens. And I think that's true. Actually, I was in Bentonville, and there's a man on the panel. His name was, I want to say his name was Kim something. And he was like, you should be going to water polo tournaments, and you should be going to, he was basically, he's like, you should be going to the events where the people with money hang out. He's like, I got my money on a yacht one time, and he was sort of, and he's had some success in the industry, but his tip was, you need to be hanging out where the money is.
And not for nothing, I absolutely agree with that at this point. I 100% agree with that. It's frustrating because like you need money to attend these events. Even if you're not playing water polo, you're
right. Like who's inviting me to the yacht?
Yeah. So, I mean, I hear him on that, but I also am like, that's much easier said than done.
Sure. It's another thing to cultivate, is like accessing those circles. But yeah, I agree with him as well. I think that's a big part of it. It's, you can crowdfund for the rest of your life, but
right.
That is
a lot of work.
It's got to be just as difficult as getting into that water polo tournament.
And I definitely think that's true, but I also feel like as filmmakers, a lot of times we kind of like just cluster around ourselves, like just hang out with other filmmakers. Yes. And that's definitely not where the money is going to be.
No. And it's so funny. You're so right, because I'm always at filmmaker events and everyone's like, a lot of going around the circle events or schmoozing events, and people say, yeah, I'm just looking for money. And I'm like, well, you're talking to the wrong crowd. So is everybody in here.
Like everybody in here.
and that's got to be the way it's been since the beginning of time. I'm sure when the Medici family was a patron of the arts, it was like, I'm sure Michelangelo and all of those painters were like, let me hang out with these guys. You know what I mean? They They had to be enterprising. They had to have been.
That's actually a really great point. Because you're right. Thinking about that historical context of that. Okay, so I'm going to start hanging out a water polo.
Yeah. Yeah, just easy.
So what has, a craft question, because you have some magical realism in this movie.
Yeah.
What was your creative process around making it feel magical? Like very nuts and bolts, like what did you do? What lenses, like that sort of stuff?
I always wanted it to be as little, digital and after effects and in post stuff as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I always wanted it to have like a very handmade feel. I had a lot of, I thought about a lot of Michel Gondry work and how sort of handmade stuff along with really beautiful cinematography was going to be the key and practical effects. So I always had that in mind, and I'll tell you how we did it. We had like it's called pampas grass, and it grows in Texas, I guess. And we had a ton of that for all the sort of magical realist scenes. We'd have like a big fan and this grass. Our special effects guy would be waving it around, and it has all these sort of like floaty little seed pods that would come down in the scene. And then we did camera tests before to find like really glowy golden filters and lenses and figure out what worked. We always talked about, shooting at high speed so you get that sort of beautiful slow-mo effect, that glowy effect. And then in terms of, you have people turning into animals. And for that, we had this artist and because Luke, Emmett's older brother in the film, is an artist and a painter, we had an incredible local artist who did both all of Luke's work as well as his charcoal drawings come to life in one of the scenes. She did those, and she also did all the animal heads with paper mache. And I mean, she was so talented and really just got it. And it was really complicated because we were also working with an animation company who did an entirely animated sequence in the film. And so she had to match her paper mache animal heads to these felt stop motion animals within the animation. And then our costume designer had to be, it was incredibly complicated, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. And that was really, I mean, a lot of the actors who came on board and, my department heads, everybody was like, now, this is like in every initial meeting, everyone was like, now, how are you going to do? Like everybody was like really nervous. It is one of those things where, everybody does have to sort of fly blind and trust that it's going to come out. I'm really happy with how we ended up getting those scenes. I feel really good about them. And I feel like they hit the mark of, what I said to a lot of people when they had those questions was like, this is going to feel like when you dream. And when you dream, it's not animated. It's not cartoon-like. It doesn't have that same feel that you get from CGI and digitally created things. It really has that handmade quality, right? So that's what we're going for. And I said a lot of the time, when you're sitting in a room and the sunlight comes in, and then all of a sudden you see in this ray of sunlight, you see the dust floating around in it. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm sure during those meetings, people were like, all right, we'll see. But those are the most fun things you do, because you just don't know. You don't know until it's done if it's gonna hit.
Well, and I think this also speaks to your direction and your vision, because it totally to me, having read the script a long time ago and seeing it, I'm like, that is exactly what was written. This is great. Like, you really
nice.
pulled it off.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job. So how about Bentonville? What was that like?
Oh man, that is a fun festival. I mean, going in, everybody said you're going to have a blast. It's going to be so much fun. I ran into people I knew. I saw great panels. They have, I don't know if you know, Walmart originated in Bentonville.
Yes.
So they have the Walmart Museum, and it's
such a tricky thing, the whole Walmart connection. But go ahead. This is decidedly a great festival. So there's that.
I really enjoyed it. I saw Gina Davis, and she did this performance with a number of other actors on stage where they role reversed. They took a scene in Avengers, which was all men, and they read, and it was all women on stage, and they were reading the male parts, and they took a bunch of sort of hyper masculine scenes from movies and read them, and that's how does it work? Does it work for you? And why can't? And really, at the end of the performance, I was like, now how can Gina Davis be in everything? Like she was
yes.
so great. And I mean, it was, but it gave you like a pang. You're like, oh, we have to see more films where women have these like really boss roles, you know? Mm-hmm. So that was cool. There's this amazing art museum, the Crystal Bridges Art Museum. I mean, I still have the pictures in my phone from just walking around kind of in awe of all the amazing artwork they had there. Originally, Vicky was supposed to go, but we had just finished The Lost Husband, so she had to do a screening in LA of that. So I was on my own, and I just had the best time. Mm-hmm. It was so fun.
Awesome. So you would totally recommend it for...
Yes.
For other women filmmakers. So those of you guys who don't know, Bentonville is dedicated to women in film, basically. Does that sound?
Yeah. And they had the most fantastic PR guy who got everybody who sought it. He would make sure you got in front of a camera, you were interviewed, you did press. It was really incredible. I've never been at a festival like it.
Nice. So, my dear, I mean, there's so many other questions I can ask you, but I don't want to suck up your whole day.
No, it's such a delight speaking with you.
I thank you. And it just really brings me joy to I read the script, years ago, and I loved it. Had you on the show, and we were talking about the other project that you had done, the Think Fast. And this was kind of like out there in the ether. Like something that you were hoping to happen, and now to just have it here, it's just pretty cool.
Yes. So to all filmmakers, you have to come on Directing Magic if you want your projects to actually happen.
Yes.
That's the magic that we're talking about.
That is absolutely staying in the cut. Well, okay, to finish up, how can people find you? How can they support your work?
So all my social is at Murphy Stokes, MurphyStokes. All of the great Boy Genius news is on social, Boy Genius the movie, on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And Gravitas Ventures is putting it out again September 6th, 2019. Select theaters, and it will be on VOD on the same day. So if you can't catch it in the theater, please watch it from your couch. We would just, I can't say enough how much your support would mean.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And now what are you excited about that doesn't have anything to do with movies?
What am I excited? I am going to Lisbon, Portugal this summer without my children, just me and my husband, and I am so excited.
I'm excited for you. I can't believe you say without your children. How is this possible?
Oh my God, because we my magical parents and magical in-laws. That's how it's possible.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show, for coming back. And I don't know, like when you get ready to like win an Academy Award, you have to come back again.
Oh my gosh, from your mouth to God's ears.
Girl, I'm trying to tell you, my words are magical. I'm not even, I mean, I'm kidding.
I am readily admitting that.
So I'm just putting that out there for you. So
Thank you so much, Marquette.
All right, take care.
All right, bye.
You've been listening to Directing Magic with Marquette Jones. Be sure to visit directingmagic.com for past episodes and other information relating to the show. Also, be sure to subscribe and rate and comment on iTunes. Until next time, bye-bye.